My name is Sandy Russell. You guys, the panelists, all know me. I'm a trial attorney. I am running for Cochise County Superior Court Judge here in Cochise County, Arizona. I've been practicing law for over 20 years, and I've been appearing in courtrooms in lots of states, actually. I've appeared pro hac vice in several states besides the 2 states I'm barred in. I'm barred in Georgia and Arizona. During my campaign, I've encountered a frequent question. Many people ask me what makes a good judge. So we decided to put together a panel of 9 exceptional trial lawyers from around the country to give us their perspective on that question. To the panelists that are here today, thank you for agreeing to participate. It certainly seems like a nice way to inform the voters of our county about the importance of electing good judges. And I appreciate all of your willingness to share your time and your experiences about what good judges look like and maybe not so good judges. Because of the forum that we're using, Zoom, and our social distancing format, it makes it a little difficult to hear everyone's input at the same time. So I'm going to try to start with one panelist at a time, and then others can jump in as they feel necessary. If there's something you want to add, there's either a hand that you can choose at the bottom of your screen, or you can just do it the old-fashioned way, and I'll try to get to you. But before we start, I want to do a brief introduction of each of the panelists. First, we have Bob McWhirter, or Robert McWhirter officially. He goes by Bob. He's been a trial lawyer for over 30 years. He's a certified specialist in criminal law. He's a former federal public defender and a Maricopa County public defender. He currently practices private criminal defense in federal, state, and city courts, as well as immigration law. He's a national and international expert on trial advocacy and regularly instructs other lawyers and judges at legal seminars. He has been published on many, many legal issues. Next, we have Gary Peak, who has been a lawyer for 30 years trying cases. He's currently in private practice in Texas, where he handles a variety of cases to include criminal defense, family law, personal injury and debt collection, among others. He was also once a briefing attorney for the Texas Court of Appeals, and he has extensive experience handling jury trials in both criminal and civil cases. And next, thank you for coming. Next we have Pat Greene. Pat Greene is a local Cochise County attorney. He recently retired from the practice of law, but he has over 40 years of trial experience. He has handled criminal law cases as a prosecutor and a defense attorney. He's also handled workers' comp cases, Social Security claims, in addition to appellate work. He's served 6 years as the Cochise County representative on the Arizona State Bar Board of Governors, and he's currently serving on the Cochise County Planning and Zoning Commission. Thanks, Pat, for coming.
Thank you.
Next, we have Patrick McLean, who is, he's been a trial lawyer for over 30 years, and he is a former U.S. Marine Corps military judge. He's practiced military law and criminal defense since 1990, where his first jury trials were held in Saudi Arabia during both Operations Desert Storm and Desert Shield. His government service ended with his work as a federal prosecutor in Dallas, where Patrick served in the general federal crime and computer crime sections. Patrick is home-based in Dallas, where he also handles cases in both Texas and criminal defense matters, Texas state and federal criminal defense matters. In federal courts throughout the U.S., Patrick has a worldwide military law practice representing service members in court martials, administrative discharge boards, officer misconduct matters, physical evaluation boards, as well as a great variety of administrative military matters. Thanks, Patrick, for being here. Next, we have Bob Hommel, who is an Arizona trial lawyer based in Phoenix with over 30 years of trial experience. He is also licensed in Colorado. Oh, I forgot to do Bob's video. Sorry, Bob. There we go. Switching these up. Bob has achieved successful verdicts in cases involving insurance bad faith, wrongful death, products liability, motor vehicle negligence, civil rights, and other personal injury claims. He has also litigated hundreds of workers' comp cases. Bob is a member of the elite $1 Million Advocates Forum for achieving jury verdicts in excess of $1 million. He also represented multiple insurance companies and government agencies that regulate insurance. Thanks, Bob, for being here. And next we have Ilya Lerma, who was born in Douglas, Arizona, I believe. And her father is Jose Lerma, who once practiced here in Cochise County. She's been practicing law for over 20 years and has extensive jury trial experience. She currently handles cases involving personal injury and insurance bad faith, medical and nursing home negligence, products liability, dram shop negligence, and insurance bad faith. She's a former public defender for the Pima County Public Defender's Office, where she also handled criminal cases. She's published numerous articles on legal issues and instructed for lawyers, and she's bilingual in Spanish and English. Thanks, Ilya, for attending.
One little clarification. I was never officially a federal public defender or public defender. I was a volunteer 38E in the felony division, but I was still in law school.
Okay, awesome.
Just to be clear.
Okay, thank you. Ben Wells has been a trial lawyer for over 25 years in the state of Washington. He has extensive trial experience as well. His primary areas of practice are personal injury, medical malpractice, and intentional torts. He is a graduate of the Trial Lawyers College. Suzanne, oh, I forgot to put Ben up. Sorry, Ben, there you are. Sorry, I forgot to put you up. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Next we have, let me remember her, Suzanne Midland, and she goes by Susie. Has been a trial lawyer for 24 years in the state of California, where she has tried more than 50 jury trials in state and federal courts. She handles medical malpractice, personal injury, general plaintiff's work, criminal defense, and civil rights cases. She's been named super lawyer every year since 2012 and was named outstanding trial lawyer in 2012 for her role in a trial of a wrongful death case. She's served on the faculty of the Trial Lawyers College since 2015. Thank you, Susie, for being here today.
Thank you.
And next we have Paul Smith. Hi, Paul. Paul has been a trial lawyer for over 35 years. He is board certified in criminal law, which requires rigorous CLE and extensive trial experience, and he has to get recertified every 5 years. He's a graduate of the Trial Lawyers College, is skilled in the art of jury trials, and has tried hundreds of cases. Thanks, Paul, for being here. Did I miss anybody? Did I get everybody? Okay. All right. So now that I have introduced everybody, I'm going to start out with my first question to Bob McWhirter. I understand that you have some unique experience being appointed to assist with reforming the Salvatorian justice system. Is that right?
Well, that is correct. I spent a year in El Salvador after doing death penalty cases in Maricopa County and writing the bar complaint against Andrew Thomas with all the things going on. I thought it was good to kind of escape a third world country and go to El Salvador in order to assist in the justice system reform. What I did is I worked for a USAID contractor. The way justice reform works in many countries is the United States Agency for International Development, which is an arm of the State Department, contracts with different consultation companies to develop certain programs, whatever. This was an $11.2 million USAID program, and I agreed to go there for a year as the administrator, so it was an ongoing program. What had brought me to that was I had worked a lot in Latin America in justice reform. And just to give kind of a brief history, most of Latin America used to work under an inquisitorial model of criminal justice. If you remember the Princess Diana, when she died, the investigation was conducted by the, quote, magistrate. Well, that's how it worked in civil countries. And most of Latin America had adopted a version of the Napoleonic Code, which provided for an inquisitorial model. Because of various problems with that, including just simple efficiency problems, most of Latin America has switched to an adversarial model of one type or another. And the United States is a great model for that. So I had spent a lot of time training prosecutors, public defenders, and judges in basic trial advocacy in Spanish. I think some of my best cross-examinations have been actually in Spanish, which doesn't really help me a lot with my cases here, but there we go. So it was an interesting development, that and general judicial reform and re-implementing court processes and different models, creating victims' rights systems. That's a lot of what I did in Latin America. And one of the things that I actually enjoyed teaching was evidence, because in an inquisitorial model, they have a different sense of how the rules of evidence would and should work. And so there was a real fascination with how that works. I remember one particular discussion that I actually had in Venezuela. I was training judges on the marital communication privilege. And the question was posed that, okay, they all agreed there should be a marital communication privilege. But then the question was posed, well, should that a privilege to a man with his mistress as well? And there was a decided split among the judges about whether that privilege should attach. I would think from my straw look, most of the male judges thought the privilege should attach. Most of the female judges thought it should not attach. But that's some of the kind of interesting discussions that I had the privilege of being able to do in Latin America.
Well, so how did that experience affect your opinion on the importance of an independent judiciary?
Well, very greatly. In fact, that was one of the key things. Remember, in the inquisitorial model, the judge and the prosecutor are the same function. And they have this kind of Rousseauian concept that they have to keep these elements in mind and whether the police prove the elements. But there's no challenge to all that. The only challenge is this kind of intellectual exercise. So it was a big deal to train judges that by taking a umpire role rather than a participation role, they actually gain more power. And so that was the key thing. Now, one of the worst criticisms of anybody that you can have of a judge in the United States or anywhere else is when you get the feeling that the judge is not respecting his or her proper role. There is no worse indicator of a bad judge than you see somebody who's biased one way or the other on anything. So I think that underscores exactly the point. And I would guess that among this panel, there's going to be a lot of unanimity on what I just stated. When you have a judge that you feel is not fair and balanced, well, that's just almost the dictionary definition of a bad judge.
Well, and so you've been practicing law for over 30 years and trying cases, trying a lot of cases actually, probably more than most attorneys. What do you look for in a judge?
Again, I think it's the impartiality and the fact that you're going to get basically not just a fair shake, but somebody who's going to follow the law. I will tell you that I have appeared, I have generally found that many state court judges are a bit more conscientious of that than federal court judges. Mostly because the federal court judges know that they have a lot of power. I will also say that my benchmark for a good judge has very little to do with the political ideology that got them to the job. Some of the most outstanding judges I have ever appeared in front of, both in federal and state court, I would probably politically agree with on just about zero. But they understand the role of the judge, and they understand that you just apply the law. And if they're not result oriented, I mean, you can't ask for anything more than that. I mean, as long as it's, we're playing in the area of what the law should be and you can make legal arguments back and forth, that's about as good as you can ask.
Okay. Now you've done, you do a lot of criminal law. How important is it for justice that a trial judge sitting in a criminal case have experience as both a prosecutor and a defense attorney from your perspective?
Almost zero. I have found that it's useful to have a judge who has trial experience, although I have appeared in front of judges, because look, the selection of judges, especially on the federal level, is quite a political mechanism, right? And I have appeared in front of judges who actually had virtually no trial experience, but boy, they got on top of the rules of evidence and they got it, and they were, capable, bright people, and they just did a great job. Frankly, from my perspective as a criminal defense lawyer, I personally have found the best judges are conservative civil practitioners, because they become judges and their attitude is, well, here's what the rule is, I'm going to apply it. So I may be an anomaly in this, but I don't think it matters really if they have extensive criminal experience one way or the other. I do think there's a problem when you have too many people just coming on from just the prosecution, or just the defense. It's nice to have a balance, I guess, at least in the judges' meetings when they have lunch together. But again, I don't think that is the absolute benchmark of what makes for a good judge.
What do you think, what is it about civil practice and having done civil practice that makes them better suited, in your opinion, for doing that type of work?
They are rule bound. They follow the rules. There is a lot more give in criminal practice because everything's, look, essentially, as we all know, 98+% of all cases result in a plea agreement. And if you look at the function of a plea agreement, it is an informal process. There is one federal rule that talks about plea agreements. I think there's one or two in the state court that actually gives you the rules regarding plea agreements. It is essentially an informal process. Yeah, now there are laws and there are case law that defines it. So there's a lot of kind of give in the way a plea process works. In the civil rules, you don't have that, and good civil lawyers figure out what the rules are and they apply the rules. And that's what you need in a judge, I think, more than anything else. Result-oriented judges can be a real problem for both sides.
Okay. All right, my next question is for Gary. I'm going to turn the video camera on to him. Gary, you've represented people in a lot of different areas of the law. I understand because you've done criminal law, family law, divorce, personal injury, med mal, DUI, all sorts of stuff. What attributes do you look for in that you consider a good judge?
Oh, I will. I hate to start off by disagreeing with Bob a little bit, but I do like someone who has a lot of trial experience. I generally feel when somebody doesn't have a lot of trial experience, too many of them are not willing to put in the time. They're not willing to put in their time to learn about the case that they're going to be hearing. They're not willing to put in the time to literally see how cases are tried. A judge who has tried many, as a lawyer, a judge who has tried many cases, he's seen it all. She's seen it all. So I will disagree on that a little bit. You do hope that the judge also has appropriate knowledge, for the position, just from an intellectual standpoint.
If you
a judge that can be compassionate. That may sound strange to the other folks on the panel, but I believe a judge that's just strictly by the rules and without compassion has more trouble being just in a case. So that's another little odd angle that I have.
Okay. So if you, let me just ask you this too. So you're saying compassion is your #1 attribute, but, and I'm sure you've been in front of a lot of judges. Are all judges good at their jobs?
Oh, goodness gracious, no. I used to be a tall building lawyer in Houston before I went back where I grew up. And so in the big cities, you'll wind up having a slate of judges come in at an election time that people just put their names on the list. And if one side sweeps out the other side, you've got a whole bunch of new judges that literally don't know what they're doing. There's some good ones that you'll get, as Bob said, that hadn't tried any cases, but those are the ones that are willing to put in the time, effort, and educate themselves, and aren't really the ones that put their name on the application to run for a paycheck. So yes, there's a lot of judges that unfortunately shouldn't be judges.
So what are some of the ramifications to your clients who've experienced a judge that didn't care to put the work in or be prepared to hear your case?
That's a great question. I think I've got a simple answer. It costs both sides a lot of extra money and a lot of extra emotional stress. Because if they don't do it right, it's going to be appealed, it's going to be tried again, and that can take years, literally. So now your client and the other client have to spend another year plus of their lives without a resolution.
And that costs a lot of money too, right?
And it costs a lot of money. And I'll tell you, it's unfortunate. I have had cases where there was a horrible ruling that resulted in at least what I believed was an unjust ending, and my client couldn't afford the cost of appealing the case. And then you're just stuck with the bad ruling.
And how easy is it to reverse a ruling on appeal?
I hate to say that's also very difficult. There's various, generally you've got to find that the judge absolutely didn't follow the law, that there's no reasonable argument that he was properly applying the law or she was properly applying the law, or they abused their discretion. And it's simply a very tall burden to meet.
How important is it to you that a judge have a well-rounded legal experience?
I'm probably prejudicial, a little prejudiced in this, because I do have what I think to be well-rounded experience in criminal, family, personal injury, even, some wills and contracts and things of that nature. I've tried banking cases against the FDIC. I've done family, I've done construction. I just believe someone who has that broad base of experience can better, if you've got a court with a general jurisdiction docket and they handle criminal and civil, I believe that broad base is very, very, very important.
And how important is life experience to being a good judge?
I'm going to use a personal example here from a prosecutor that I worked with for a long time. She was an assistant district attorney, sweet, sweet lady, love her to death. She did have experience as a briefing attorney at the Court of Appeals, but effectively that was her legal experience. And she didn't have life insurance. That's funny. She did not have life experience. She was someone who was from a nice upper middle class family, did not have any family members, friends that generally had criminal issues, so she couldn't understand that. She didn't come either from a broken home or family with divorce or custody, issues. I mean, she lived a wonderfully blessed life, but that kept her from having life experience and understanding what attorneys are trying to get across regarding a specific case, whether it's a custody case or a criminal case or a personal injury case. I believe the life experience also another very important part for a good judge.
Okay, so one of the, I think you've already covered the, has there been a situation when you've handled a family law case or a divorce case where a judge's lack of either life experience or legal experience ended up costing your client more time and money?
Well, let me give you something that's still ongoing. I've got a case, and this is a case where I was appointed to represent the unknown father. And I said, okay, well, I think the mother's lying about who the potential father is. I need to be able to dig into this more. And I requested a DNA test of the child so that I could send it to 23andMe or Ancestry.com to try to find family members that are related on the father's side to that child. And this judge simply says that's never done. It's never been done before, and initially denied me. And so you get some of that when you've got folks with, again, lack of experience in a certain type of law. if you're trying something that they're not used to, they're simply going to deny it, and that's doesn't usually end in a good way.
Okay, well, thanks, Gary. I'm going to move on to Pat Greene. Pat, you know firsthand that we've just lost some pretty great experience from our Superior Court bench. We lost 3 veteran judges that retired last year. And our presiding judge is now retiring this year, and that's the judge position that I'm running for. And we only have 6 judges in this county. So in your view, how important is it to our community that our next judge have a wide range of legal experience?
I think it's absolutely crucial. The more the life experience that a person has, they have a better grasp of humanity and the problems and travails of just common folk. Yeah, we lost 3 great judges. I presented cases to all of them, both civil and criminal. No jury trials with regards to those, but I felt that as I came out of that, whether it was a win or a loss, that each judge paid attention and was extremely fair.
Oops. Hold on a second. Sorry, I muted you, Pat. Did you fix it?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, sorry, keep
Okay.
going.
All right. I've spent 17 years of practice here in Arizona in front of the Superior Court judges that are retiring, as I indicated, as well as some of the JP judges, especially here in Sierra Vista and Bisbee, and as well as practice in the Tombstone, Arizona Magistrate Court, both as a defender of a court-appointed defendants, and as well as a city prosecutor. In Tombstone, I spent 5 years as a city prosecutor, and that was sandwiching between me doing court appointment, especially criminal cases, because there were very few attorneys who wanted to come over to Tombstone, even though it was only like 18 miles away. But I moved to Tombstone on purpose from Ohio because I liked the history of Tombstone and the whole thing about the Old West and you know, Wyatt Earp and brothers and everything else. But I practiced 20 years in Ohio. The first about 7 years I practiced, I did about everything. Evictions, again, criminal cases, some contract disputes, things like that. But one of my criminal cases, I was appointed by the court to represent this gentleman who was speeding through where I live is Pickaway County. And he was going about 100 miles per hour, about 2 o'clock in the morning. And so they stopped him and did a blood test by way of warrant. And it came back that he had quite a bit of cocaine in his blood. But but there was possibly a mix-up in the testing of the blood. So that's where I was kind of hanging my hat on. But Pickaway County is very rural, agriculturally oriented. So I get a lot of, you know, what I call just common mom and pops. And my judge, this was presented to the municipal court judge. We only had 1 municipal court judge and 1 common pleas court judge. So you either you were in a good position or you're SOL with regards to presentation. But the municipal court judge had a terrible reputation. And I found that out when I was doing voir dire with the jury. And I'm asking the questions and I hear the judge behind me going, oh, and just kind of commenting on those type of things, not really saying anything. A couple of times he interrupted me and said, Mr. Greene, how much longer are you going to be questioning these jurors? And and when I was making that presentation, you hear the judge behind you making those nonverbal comments, all the eyes switch to the judge. And they're obviously then the jury's basically making judgments on me, the attorney representing the defendant. And I lost that case, but the judge oftentimes would, even in cross-examination, would interrupt me and just basically say, how much longer are you going to be asking these questions of the witness? Have you inquired sufficiently at this time, Mr. Greene? So very biased judge, very biased. And a lot of attorneys had the same experience there in Pickaway County. And so it was just he did finally step down, and most of the attorneys came over to my office and we had a celebration. We were just very glad. And we were able to imbibe a lot of good celebration firewater. So
along those lines, though, a show of hands of who's had that happen to us, where a judge has interjected themselves into our jury trial and has refused to let us try our cases or present our cases to our juries. I think all of us have had that experience more than once. And that's one of the reasons I'm running for this position, because I had a really bad experience with a federal judge who did that. And I won't bore you with the details of that, but when a judge does not maintain his neutral and unbiased position and interjects his opinions and his and himself into the trial, there is absolutely very little chance of your client getting justice.
that's correct.
Yeah.
And I think we all know that if a jury doesn't like the lawyer, you've pretty much lost the case for the defendant. And it's very hard to overcome that bias.
Right.
And the three judges who we lost, I never saw that. And I haven't experienced making any presentation to we've got three new judges. And so I don't know that experience with regards to them, but go back to your, one of the primary things is life experience.
It was, well, actually I asked you about legal experience, how important it was to have a wide range of legal experience, since we're losing our long-term judges.
Yes, and but in some ways, Sandy, they merge, and the legal experience, oftentimes a person cuts himself off because from other areas and from different clients, and become limited. I think you see that especially in prosecutors as well as government lawyers, that many times they've come right out of law school and looking for a job, so they get into the government jobs or prosecution, and they never leave that until they deem it's proper or appropriate for them and their experience. Say, well, I'm owed a promotion, so I'm going to run for judge. And or they owe it to me, so or they have an agenda. I see, I feel some sympathy for Bob McWhirter, because there's been a lot of agendas that haven't dealt with making a presentation of equal and fair access to the law. And I think most of us here in Arizona know that's part of our mission statement. And if you have been a prosecutor, you're always assuming that the person, the defendant, is most likely guilty. And so that's going to color their experience and decision-making process with regards to them being on being in the court and being on that bench. So it's extremely important. And so we have three role models that, like we come back that statement, that have been presented and we've all experienced. I'm not sure all the candidates at this point in time see them or want to follow in their steps. I think they have some other agendas.
Okay. All right, I'm going to move on to Patrick McLean. I got to turn his video on.
Hi, Sandy.
Hi. Patrick, you've tried some pretty high-profile criminal cases, and you're an outspoken advocate for the importance of the rule of law. What's wrong with having politics in the courtroom?
Well, I can't imagine that it wouldn't be obvious to anybody who is even not a practitioner of the law that the case should be based on the evidence presented in there and not an agenda on the part of the decision maker, whether it's the jury as fact finder or the judge as a referee or umpire on the law. So absolutely, politics or any outside agenda does not belong in a court of law.
Well, okay, so now there are those who say that a judge should be compassionate, and we've heard that from Gary. And then there are others who say judges should never have emotions in making their rulings. What do you think about that?
Well, I think C.S. Lewis used the term men without chests, or shall we say people without chest. A person without a heart is a person without a chest. It's not a full human being. We perceive things through our mind and our hearts, through our souls. We often refer to it as common sense, intuition, and life experience. But one simply doesn't come to know the truth by some sort of rational process like an arithmetic problem. One also has to understand how people truly work. And that's where my fellow Texan, Gary Peak, I thought hit the bullseye. We have to have a certain amount of life experience. I'm very grateful that I've done a lot of different things in life. I started off very poor, loading trucks, working restaurants, doing the blue collar jobs that a lot of Americans do. And then I served in the Marine Corps, first in a combat role, and then later on as an attorney, as you pointed out, finally as a judge on the bench. But I think that kind of varied life experience is important because you as a judge have to be able to understand where the litigants come from and have to live something. You can't have every job in life, you can't have every life experience, but you have to be able to empathize with people. And if you aren't able to reverse roles, to walk in that woman or that man's shoes for a while, you lack the basic data and intelligence in order to use your reason to come to the right result, I believe.
Well, how important is it that a Superior Court judge or a court here in Arizona, our Superior Court judges are our court of general jurisdiction. How important is it that they be competent in the law and get their rulings right under the law or according to the law?
Well, I realize this is necessarily advocacy for Ms. Sandy Russell's candidacy, but I will say I would like a judge who has your varied experience, if I may.
Oh, well, thank you.
Because if you're going to have a judge in the bench, I would want her to have some sort of experience in an area of law and show the ability to be versatile enough in order to study up and understand the rule of law. I think there's nothing better in a judge, having served as a judge, than a great deal of humility. Because when you're a judge, everybody stands up when you walk in the room. All of a sudden your jokes become funny, and it can quickly go to one's head. So the best thing that you can do is to understand you don't have all the answers. And these counsel have worked the cases very hard, and they have considered a lot of it. And along the lines of what I believe Bob McWhirter said, and at least Pat Greene commented on, sometimes judges are quick to ready, fire, aim, without taking the time to consider maybe the counsel have already thought of something that you have not yet considered, and engage in a little colloquy with the counsel first to see where she's coming from and what she may have considered that she made the choice she did, or why she needs an extension in her deadline, or why she may have chose the course of action. When I heard about all the sighing that Pat Greene talked about in The Judge, I have to say, probably that judge was a poor litigant, if he ever was a litigating attorney, because that's exactly the most rude, disrespectful, and frankly shameful thing for a judge to do, to denigrate the position by becoming a commentator on the council. That is beneath the position of the judge. Even if you think a council is maybe not up to snuff, or even if you think the council may have done something unethical, you as a judge have to always be above board and always treat everybody with dignity. You criticize in private and praise in public. That's just like a basic leadership principle.
That's a very good point, Pat, and thanks for bringing that up. And I share some of your job experience. My first job was milking dairy cows, so I don't ever meet a lot of lawyers who have milked dairy cows. Okay, Bob Hommel, I'm coming to you, my friend. I'm putting you on spotlight. You've been a certified specialist in workers' compensation in Arizona for a long time. One of the things you do is represent people who have wrongfully been denied insurance benefits, insurance bad faith. Isn't that right?
That's correct, Sandy. And to clarify, I let my specialist certification lapse in 2019. I worked in the area of workers' compensation for over 20 some years, representing both sides, and I saw that it wasn't working properly, and so I decided to take the fight to the insurance companies on a higher level.
Well, so insurance bad faith, would you say that that is a complex area of the law?
It's an extraordinarily complicated area of law. In most cases, I really have to educate the judge because it's a new area of law too. It's only been around since the late 70s, which is new in law.
And you and I have had a couple of bad faith insurance cases together, correct?
We've had some humdingers.
Yeah. And what is it about the area of insurance bad faith that makes it a complicated area of the law?
Well, you know, I would say, first of all, as we all know, there's a power struggle going on in this country right now. The courtroom is the place where the people are the government, and the people decide what is justice among them. And as corporations have become more and more powerful, they are looking into ways to take that power away from the people in the courtroom and put it back in themselves. And so the amount of money that they spend to twist the law, to come up with experts who say anything, makes it difficult sometimes.
Bob, how hard, and my last bad faith insurance case, it took 6 years to get in front of my jury. How hard is it to get your day in court in front of a jury in a civil case?
Federal courts are running a little faster now. I would say 2 years you're in a federal court. It takes 4 years in state court now, unfortunately. And one of the reasons for that is you have to waste at least a year on discovery fights. The insurance companies won't give you the documents you know exist because they don't want anybody to know about them. And we always have to swear to secrecy that we're not going to reveal this to the public. The only way we ever have to let the public know what's really going on is when we go to trial, because then the rules change. Then it's the United States of America, and we have open courtrooms.
Well, and you touched on a good point, that there's discovery disputes. How important is it for judges to understand these discovery disputes and have participated in these as a lawyer to be able to, put the kibosh on these disputes?
You know, Sandy, what I think the most important trait in a judge is the heart of service. I really don't look for any thoroughbred pedigree on who becomes a judge or what area of law or how broad they are. What I look for is how hard they're willing to work, because the way the system works is the two lawyers give the judge the best arguments possible for their side. But then you want a judge who has read those briefs, read the cases, and maybe has come up with something on their own to discuss about. So that's what you want, is a judge who wants to be fair to everybody who's going on there and doesn't have what I sometimes see as elitism, wanting to uphold a certain idea or section of society.
Now, I'm sure you've had this problem. I've had it in the past. I mean, I know I spend a great deal of time writing my legal briefs. And it's happened to me on many occasions where I've gone in for the hearing on the motion for what the brief that I've written, and it's obvious the judge never read them, and they're not prepared. How have you had that experience as well?
You can tell when they're faking, can't you, Sandy?
Yeah.
Not very often, thank goodness. Thank goodness. Most of the time, they have read it, but there's this upper echelon of judges who have really studied the materials. And I think I get lucky in bad faith because this is such a low percentage of cases that judges are off guard when they get a bad faith case and they really do the work. But so that is a very important trait in the judges. Are they willing to do the work?
Yeah, that's a real important factor. Okay, thanks, Bob. I'm going to move on to Ilya.
Thank you, Sandy.
Ilya, as I understand it, you kind of grew up in the law. Your dad's kind of a legend around here in Cochise County.
Good ways and in bad, I think.
Right? It's before I was here, but
he's
I've
a
heard
little
good
bit
things.
he's a little bit notorious for Southern Arizona. A great trial lawyer example for me big shoes to fill.
Mm-hmm. You've probably been hearing about negligence since you were 4.
My dad was one of the last great general practitioners, and he did a lot of criminal law. Okay. So he and I really didn't get into the civil side. In fact, he was a little disappointed, I think, that I didn't choose the path of the public defender after I had that opportunity to try some felony level cases. But eventually, later on in my career, he did become, he and I actually had a couple civil cases together. We didn't get to try any of them together, which was unfortunate for me. But yeah, definitely grew up in the law. Okay, well, but you are an excellent trial lawyer in your own right, and you've tried lots of civil trials. And a lot of your cases, you're representing people and injustices that they've suffered. Do you believe it's important for a judge to have civil jury trial experience based on what you do for your clients? I've been in front of a few judges who didn't have any civil trial experience. I'll tell you, though, after having an opportunity to be in front of several kinds of judges, some with experience, some without, some on the criminal bench, there are judges who can make up the difference, if they don't have a civil background. But it's as a lot of the other co-panelists have indicated, it means putting in the time. To me personally, I would much rather be in front of a judge who has civil trial experience. It certainly helps. Even matters as simple as scheduling. And I apologize. Today is a funny day. I have a teenager running around trying to get ready for a trip. I have text messages from the other teen and a cat who apparently has decided to make an appearance on today's program no matter what. Okay. So I apologize. It's a little distracting. But I think what Mr. McWhirter said, I would concur with. I think there's a real problem with having a judiciary that's all from the same kind of background. When you end up with all civil prosecutors, when you end up with all civil defense lawyers who end up sitting on the bench, that lack of diversity, I think, is a tremendous problem. One I do like to see remedied. How important is it for your cases for a jury to hear your case? Well, I mean, jury trials for us on the civil side in this environment, and I think particularly post-COVID, there's a lot of unknowns. So there's a lot of reasons not to take a case to trial from the civil practitioner side. It's risky, and it's expensive. It's unpredictable, and as some of the other panelists have indicated, having improper input from the judges, from a judge who's not a good judge, who does want to put their thumb in. This is what I meant. I don't know, Scott. She's never like this. But let me see if I can get her to stop. Excuse me 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Get down.
That's the beauty of a Zoom seminar.
Yes. So
She's literally made an appearance on, I teach a webinar once a week. It used to be twice a week. And every program, she will at some point jump up in my lap. She has no interest in me whatsoever until I get right in front of my computer. So my apologies.
that's okay. So, but the public, from the public standpoint, they don't always understand the value. Some people do, some people don't. But what is the value to you as a lawyer in being able to have your case in front of a jury?
It's enormously important. It's truly, as rarely as I get to do it, because as a civil practitioner, I really don't have as many opportunities. I have a very small practice. I am pro hoc in a couple other states currently, but the ability to take a case to trial is really only one of the great hammers, one of the great leveling processes that we have to balance the justice scales. An insurance company who's not in any mode to try to settle a case, they simply have valued it differently than you, they will drag their feet as long as possible. There is truly no greater hammer than an impending jury trial. And this is, as I was saying earlier, sometimes matters as simple as scheduling. When a judge understands that an insurance company is much more likely to participate in a mediation with somebody who has authority to potentially settle a case, and the effect of having a looming trial date, what that does to people's motivations to settle, having that kind of knowledge from the bench is extremely helpful for us. But having the counterweight of the jury trial, the potential jury trial on the other side, is really the last great measure that we have to protect people from the corporate overrun that Bob was talking about.
Well, thank you, Ilya. I'm going to move on to Susie because we only got like 8 minutes left.
I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
I apologize.
Susie, how are you doing? It's great to see you. You've been an outspoken advocate for our jury trial system and the importance of going to trial when it's necessary. Why is a jury trial important to you? Oh, let's see.
There we go.
There
Okay.
you go. Okay.
The importance of a jury trial can hardly be overstated. You know, the wisdom of our founding fathers, and from the Magna Carta, initiated the right to a jury trial when the king wouldn't let the peasants fish and hunt, and they were getting caught all the time, and king's cronies would find them guilty and they'd be punished. And England rose up and did away with that, and we adopted England's stance on this. It can't be overstated. It is, as Ilya said, the one thing that levels the wealthy and the powerful down to one individual, weighs them against that one person. So it can't be overstated. When it's your case, believe me, you want those folks there helping you.
Okay. I'm going to move on to Ben because we're running out of time. Ben, hey, how are you? You do a lot of jury trials. How did the best judges in your experience handle jury selection? Oh, you're muted. Hold on, you're muted. I don't know if you're muted on your end or my end.
I'm
There.
on mute.
Yeah, there, you're good now.
So, you know, judges, everything's, so many good points have been touched on, but, and it comes right through in selection of jury trial as well, because judges need to understand their role and what the goal is in selecting an impartial jury. And when judges rush the system, gee, counsel, how much time do you have, or comment on how someone's conducting selection of a jury, it can be devastating to a trial. And it can ultimately, to either side, it can affect whether you have an unbiased jury panel. And if you don't have an unbiased jury panel, why even go to trial? Okay, so it's crucial that you have a committed judge. And I think to wrap this up, being a judge is really hard work. And if you don't have people committed to the system, as been mentioned by a number of these folks, they hit the nail on the head, they can't meet the level of work that is required of a good judge. And I think that's crucial.
And in some ways, when you're a civil litigator, I mean, I know that I've done both. I've done both criminal law and I've done civil litigation. And I find the practice of civil litigation to be 100 times harder than doing criminal prosecution or even criminal defense. I think defense is way harder than prosecution, but civil litigation is just way harder because it often involves many different statutes that conflict with one another. And then you also have all these case law interpretations, and it requires a much higher level of legal analysis and writing skills and all kinds of other things. And for me personally, the work required to be a civil litigator prepares you for the work involved in being a judge, because I'm used to working 16-hour days. When I have trial, I don't sleep. I get an hour of sleep on average for months before I get to trial, because it's so much work. Would you agree that being a civil litigator probably gives you that work ethic?
Yes, absolutely. You're going against a high-powered law firm on the other side that is compensated handsomely by big corporations or insurance companies, and they'll throw everything at you. And you've got to work 16 hours at times, or you have to have, you have to be very committed. And so, yeah, I would look for in a judge someone, because again, being a judge is hard work. You have to have somebody that's committed, that has a track record of proving that in the past I have done hard work to be able to be a good judge, I think.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to move on to Paul. Thank you, Ben. So Paul, you're also a specialist in criminal law. And I'm going to, let's see here.
How about this, Sandy? Let me just say a couple
Just tell
quick
me.
things.
Yeah, tell me what you want to say about everything.
Number one, I like what Ben said, and there are a lot of judges that should be committed. And I'm not talking about the work ethic. I'm talking about committed to institutions. You have to be very well balanced to be a judge. The number of requirements necessary. You're in a multi-jurisdictional area. You're running for a bench that has jurisdiction over all sorts of cases. There is no way that any one person can master every one area of the law. It is important to remember that you are a trial judge, not a paper judge. And it's important for a couple of reasons. Number one is, in coronavirus, you're going to require innovative techniques to service the needs of your state or your district or your circuit. You're going to have some technological knowledge, and you're going to have patience. The patience to understand and the patience to realize that your opponents will yell at you about the number of cases you have lagging. And what you should be committed to, and I know you are, and what the voters should look at is the opportunity to allow the participants adequately have their voice, adequately be represented. And I'll just say this, black robe disease is the #1 disease. And for some of the audience, that means that you become so powerful by your own clothing and title that you forget you are human and the people in front of you are human. You will face people that are not represented by lawyers, that don't know the law, and patience is the key in my mind. I know you will be a great judge. I'm honored that I got to be in here with some of the best panelists, the best attorneys in the country. I don't know how I got in on this, but thank you.
Well, because you're my friend, Paul, that's how you got in on this. But thank you so much and we're out of time. I was hoping to kind of, just real quick, we can go a little bit. I want to ask Ilya and Susie to comment a little bit on being a female trial lawyer, what that's been like for you, and then we'll close.
Thank you for that, Sandy. That's nice.
What's it like? How is it being a female trial lawyer? I know that I experience a lot of times I get told I'm aggressive, or I feel like we don't get called assertive and competent and confident. We get called, negative terms are used to describe our skills as trial lawyers. Do you guys experience that?
Oh, for certain. I grew up in a time when there weren't a lot of female mentors for me, and I was extremely fortunate that people like Bob and other male trial attorneys in Phoenix who served as terrific mentors to me. People like David Wenner and Ty Tabor, and I was just so fortunate to be able to have that. But the lack of female members, particularly in the trial association, was difficult, especially as a young attorney. And I've certainly encountered exactly what you've talked about, Sandy, where our anger, our passion, sometimes our intensity it's frowned upon a lot. And so we really don't have the same tools as men. But what I think I've learned in the last 5 or 6 years, as I have had more opportunities to grow past Arizona, is that we have other tools. And more I'm seeing up and coming organizations of very powerful, very successful, very intelligent female attorneys, trial attorneys who do things their way. And it's incredibly inspiring. I'm glad to be a part of that movement. I will be the first female president of the Arizona Trial Lawyers that we've had in, I don't know, how long has it been, Bob? Like 20 years?
Awesome.
It's been a long time.
And if I'm elected, I will be the 3rd female Superior Court judge ever in Cochise County.
Oh, we absolutely need it. Yeah. Absolutely need it.
So Susie, I want to switch to you just real quick. What are your thoughts on that?
On being a woman trial lawyer?
Yeah.
Oh, when I go in the courtroom, I try to forget that I'm a woman and just do my job. It just seems to work better. I don't really care if people think I'm weird or, I'd rather just serve my client, remember what I'm doing there, and try to get my client some justice. I've certainly felt as though I was being discriminated against by some male judges and even a couple of female judges here in San Diego. We've got a huge court system here, and I've tried cases all over the state. But for the most part, I have to say that I haven't really felt discriminated against, except when it comes to emotion. And one of the comments I wanted to make today is that a lot of judges seem afraid of their own feelings. And I had a judge once tell me, "Oh, Ms. Minlin, emotions have no place in the courtroom." And, and I was in front of the jury and I said, "How can you say that? This is where the dramas of real people play out." And there are feelings and there are relationships, and we have to understand these things because they're part of the truth that we are seeking. And he kind of sat back and he goes, you know what, I think I agree with you. So that's what I want to get across is judges need to be able to feel. They need to be able to allow themselves to feel. And so man, woman, I don't know, but feelings and relationships, those are important.
Well, every book you read on neuro-linguistic programming and and how people think and how they decide all say the first thing is we feel first. That we don't think and make decisions by thinking, we feel first. And that's what drives our decision making. And so that's important.
Right.
That's
then
important.
we go back and reread the law and figure out how we can make this happen.
Right. Who wanted to talk?
Yeah, can I pipe in here on something?
Yes, go ahead. Which
Yeah,
one?
I just kind of wanted to piggyback, and I've listened carefully to everything that's been said, which I just think has been terrific. Even when Gary disagreed with me. But I was kind of thinking, Aristotle said that the role of the judge is to act in the place of the legislator had the legislator seen this specific case, which is a kind of good way to think about it. And I'm going to kind of say this, and I'll probably be quoted on this someday. It's going to cause me a political firestorm, but I think what a judge should do is follow, especially a trial judge. Now, the appellate court judge is different, but follow the law, listen, read all the briefings, prepare, and scrupulously do that, be fair, and then quietly cheat sometimes to make sure justice happens.
Well, thank you for that. And on that, you guys, thank you so much for participating in this. Maybe I'll have another one at another point. I can't thank you enough. Have a great weekend, what's left of it, and I'll see you all out there.
Best of
All right.
luck.
Thanks, Sandy. Best of luck.
Sandy. Good luck.
Bye.